All right, let's get you this segment now, and it is called In Retrospect. This is where we look at stories which have been leading the news bulletins in the past week. It's called In Retrospect. Now, this morning, we're looking at the impact of the Public Servants Association and government's response. Well, we know that a strike is now in full swing. In the United States, the midterm elections there, they have wrapped up. I think what is happening now is the collation of those votes. We're going to see what the final outcome is going to be. And then, closer to home, coalition governments in the country following Tania Campbell's reinstatement as the Mayor of Ekurhuleni. And my guests are in studio with me right now, and let's see if I can introduce them to you. And my team will actually kill me for this because we're also going to have in the conversation Zikhona Tshona, and she's covering a very, very difficult story coming out of the Eastern Cape, and this is where a mother allegedly killed her 4 children, and she's in the area of Mthatha. She is going to join us later in this conversation. For now, let me introduce my guests, and we'll start on the left-hand side, or to my right. Let me allow you to introduce yourself.
Left-hand side is fine.
Please tell the viewers who you are and what brings you here.
Well, I'm Tasneem Esso. I'm brought here to provide some commentary. I'm based at WITS at a research institute called the Society Work in Politics.
There we go. And to you, Ndat.
My name is Omry Makgoale.
Yes.
I'm here as a political analyst,
yes,
or sometimes political commentator.
Indeed, and also a veteran leader of the African National Congress. Let me thank you both for making it to studio. Tasneem, let's start with you. The Public Servants Association strike, it is now in full swing. Do you anticipate that this is going to be protracted? Because if it does, there's going to be a major impact. Remember, we've just averted the Transnet strike, which had already started causing backlogs in our ports. Is it in the interest of government to allow this to continue any further, this latest strike?
Well, government made a unilateral announcement around the wage negotiations, and I think that's the key issue here. But the other side of this is that the unions don't all agree in the public sector on this strike action. And we saw yesterday some strike action, and now there is some time given to government to respond to the action by the PSA yesterday, and we see today SAMU is also still, there was a meeting this morning and are still involved in some sort of action today. I think a key issue definitely is around which unions have agreed already with government, which are still embarking on strike action. So I think there is something to be said around that. And we haven't had a major public sector strike in some years. I think 2010 was the last major strike action in the public sector. Of course, there have been others since then, but sort of more unified public sector strike.
Ntate Makgoale, let's come to you. You are not only a political commentator nowadays, but you're a veteran leader of the party. There is this mistrust, if I could characterize it as that. Mistrust has developed as a result of government backing away from a 3-year deal, the last leg being reneged upon at the time that the finance minister was Tito Mboweni. A huge distrust now exists between workers and their employer, who is government. Is that something that you think is in the interest of the current leadership, political leadership, to allow to set in? Because then that is going to give us huge problems going forward.
Yes, I think it's not a perfect situation for the current government. that they have to deal with this strike and public service strike. So ideally you want the state to be functioning well, the government to be functioning well, and this strike does affect that. And so the fact that the trust between the workers and the leaders, who happen to be my party leaders, is no longer as cemented as it was before.
Yeah.
It's a worrying thing for us. But the workers cannot really be blamed much, because when you see that the leaders are living a lavish lifestyle and you are expected to sacrifice and so on, it doesn't make sense to you. Because what do you normally prefer? You want to see example from the leaders. When the leaders are living, in a proper way, they don't spend and all these monies, and this the money that was spent on state capture, or as Zondo has revealed on the past 10 years what has happened. So the workers are not impressed with that.
Yep.
So, and this is why they feel that they have a right to strike, to demand higher salary, because the money is there.
Yeah.
They've seen it. They've seen the money. It's been spent everywhere. They've seen it. So difficult to sell them, let's go for 3%, when they see you living a lifestyle that is actually out of control.
Well, let me abuse you a little bit, seeing that you are a veteran leader of the governing party. Why is it that the leaders of the day, leaders of the ANC, do not see a problem with their lavish lifestyles in a sea of poverty, as political commentary would go in political circles?
Yeah, it's actually a shame for us as ANC members, because we were taught to be exemplary as ANC members, to exemplary to the population. And now that we live out of control, we are completely outside those norms set by people like O.R. Tambo, Nelson Mandela, Chief Albert Lithuli in the past. So we are supposed to be exemplary. And at the moment, we're not really exemplary. And for us, it's as ANC members, we were disappointed and also not so happy about it. But we know it's the result of the state capture, yes.
Yeah.
The ANC being captured by, unfortunate, families that are not supposed to have captured the ANC. And it goes back to how we elect leaders, deployment.
Yeah.
Who is in the office and how did this person come to the office? And that is where this deployment issue always comes up. And deployment starts with elections.
Yeah.
How you elect leaders. That's the first form of deployment. So unless we address that, we cannot really solve these problems that we see today.
All right, let's move on to another major story of the week, Tasneem. The U.S. midterm elections. They've come and gone, not entirely. It's not conclusive yet, because the results are still being tallied, or the votes are still being tallied. Whatever the final outcome, what do you foresee to be the problems that are going to confront that country? And I think juxtapose your response to countries like South Africa that look to the U.S. for help in the many sectors of the economy.
Sure. It's a midterm election,
Yeah.
so obviously it sets the stage sort of for the next national presidential election, rather. I think what's significant that's coming out is that the Republican Party did not do as well as expected. So there are majorities that will be won, but that kind of, I think it was called a red wave in the U.S. didn't happen, and I think that has a bearing on former President Trump, who wants to contest again, or hasn't yet said that he will, but they are. That is the context of this midterm election, and I think doesn't bode well in terms of that particular bid, or at least there is some indication that there isn't this red wave that will carry a Trump candidacy forward so easily. Yeah. I think a few things are significant about that. The one is, if you kind of read the U.S. midterms with what's happening in a place like Brazil, with their recent elections. And if you look at figures like Trump and Bolsonaro losing that election in Brazil to Lula, of course, as we've seen just last week, I think it was. And if you look at Trump and, you know, the kind of context of the midterm elections, there is this tentative, you know, shift around populist, right-wing politicians.
But
so
also
I think that's
political
interesting.
comebacks.
Yeah.
Lula da Silva is a former president.
Yeah.
He's now back in charge of Brazil. Donald Trump, I suppose he harbors those ambitions. Is there something to be said around that? I think Israel, there are suggestions that Benjamin Netanyahu may possibly be back again. What is going on?
Well, I mean, this is a feature, and I think, you know, in Brazil it's interesting because Lula won by a very slim margin over Bolsonaro, and they had to go to you know, a runoff and so on. So I think that closeness, but this kind of coming back of politicians is an interesting feature. Something that's not uncommon. It's not completely uncommon, but there is, if you look into the kind of internal dynamics of these countries and the kind of, you know, social issues, a cost of living crisis in the U.S. A lot of the election was fought around issues of abortion and reproductive rights. So, and then, of course, in Brazil, you know, their own set of economic and social issues that, you know, elections are run on. But, yeah, this kind of repetition is definitely interesting to look at in terms of the cycles of politics in these countries.
Mr. Makgoale, the U.S. midterm elections, they come at a time when our president recently visited that country, the United States, on an official state business. And on the back of that, you now have a very strange phenomenon that's happened, and these are U.S. terror alerts about the security situation in our country. The U.S. simply saying we are warning our citizens to stay away from perhaps areas that could be congested because they could be soft targets for terrorist attacks. On the back of that, you then have had 4 individuals who are linked to South Africa yet again, who have been sanctioned by the U.S. Characterize that relationship for us.
I think I wouldn't say a very friendly relationship. It's somewhere between lukewarm, because if it's a friendly relationship, they would have informed the president, you know, about this without just placing the terror alert on internet for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So our security services were somehow undermined. Of course, maybe our security services are not as good as we should think. You know, after those years of the capture years, our intelligence has been undermined seriously. State security agents has been undermined. So maybe it's not trusted anymore, and this is why the U.S. Maybe decided to just you know, broadcast that directly, which of course is not very you know, comforting for any country to be told by a foreign power that be careful. The citizens of your country be told by a foreign power that be careful of such a mall, you might get this. It's not very comforting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't reflect good relations in my mind.
All right, let's bring another dimension to this conversation, and it's a story that has taken place in the Eastern Cape, and my colleague Zikhona Tshona is in the town of Umtata right now. Zikhona, good morning to you and welcome to this conversation. This is a story of a family in Engcobo where the mother of 4 children allegedly bludgeoned her children to death. Just take us into the mood of that community. How is the feeling? Because there does seem to be a very interesting turn of events where the community appears supportive of the dark cloud that has fallen on this family.
Certainly, Koli, yesterday, 32-year-old mother, No Boleko Smaile, who known to her family as Noludu, appeared before the Ngcobo Magistrates Court. She is facing 4 counts of murder, allegedly murdering her children on Wednesday morning. Her father actually came to court yesterday to support her, but the entire community in their village is rallying behind the family. They do believe that the young woman was not in the right state of mind when she allegedly committed these crimes. Her father has come out and spoken to various media organizations, including ourselves, and he says on Wednesday when he woke up, he found his daughter crying on the stoep, asked her what was happening, and she said to him, "Dad, ndibabulele abantwana, I have killed my children." So even though the family is still frightened, still in shock about what has happened, they have said that they will support this young woman, 32 years old, throughout the court proceedings. We do know that she plans to apply for bail next week, Thursday, and her father has said, as the family, they will be going out to every court appearance in her support, that they are calling for her to get mental assistance even while she's going through this ordeal. They're saying that they know that she has allegedly committed a crime. They don't blame her for what happened. They don't hate her for what happened. They certainly of the belief that she is in need of help. And even themselves, they have been using the services of social workers from the province to offload the emotional burden that they are now having to carry, given the fact that they've just lost 4 young children who had hopes, who had dreams. I think the grandfather was telling me yesterday that every morning he used to wake up his grandchildren and one of them would greet him with a smile and a laugh. And for him now, going forward, he will never have that experience again.
Zikhona, it's such a gruesome story. The father of this mother, he alluded a little earlier on the story that we have been playing, that you put together for us, that perhaps the roots here, while everyone wonders what would have influenced this woman to do this to her own children, but he did somehow point to what he said was ukuqhathwa, where the father is suggesting that perhaps the father of the children may have abandoned the mother, perhaps to look after the children by herself. Just take us into what exactly the father of this mother is suggesting here. Perhaps the grandfather is the better way to put this.
Listen, the father or the grandfather rather of these children has come out to say that this opens up for him, even himself, a conversation about mental health and looking after your children and just asking them how they are daily. He does say that he believes that his daughter may have been going through a mental challenge after following a relationship, for example, or some disagreement that she may have had with someone that she trusted as a partner. But he says he's using this time to also tell his story as a father about someone who may have neglected not only his own mental well-being, but also that of his daughters. That family has many questions to ask about what happened. They don't know. They did not sleep on Tuesday morning expecting to wake up on Wednesday to such heart-wrenching ordeal right in their home. So even for them, this has come as a shock. They are trying to piece together whatever they can to just try and find out in what mental state she was in around the time that this happened, because as I've mentioned, she has confessed to them to committing this said crime. Her mother even said, we spoke to the grandmother of these children yesterday, that her mother said, you know, when she spoke about this, she seemed very remorseful. She said to me, "Oh, abantwana bam ndibabulele, I have killed my poor children." So the family certainly does believe that there is some remorse on her side, and they do suspect that there is something that broke her heart, something that disturbed her, that is deeper, that requires help not only for her, but also for that family. I mean, it was a brief court appearance for her in court at the Noble Magistrates Court yesterday, but even through that, you could see she was frightened, she was shaken, lowering her head on various occasions to just cry. Her father saying that he thinks the reason that she was crying in court yesterday is because when she looked back, she could see her father, she could see some of her aunts and uncles there present to support her. They have said that they will continue to do this because they believe this opens up a conversation, particularly around in this community, about mental health, people taking care of each other and asking each other how they are. They do say, though, that they believe she has something to answer to, but they're saying that is not in isolation. That can be accompanied with some psychological support, not only for her, but for the community of Salaba village, as well as the Smaile family.
Very briefly, Zikhona, is there something to be said about perhaps a relationship breakdown between the mother of the children and the father?
It's not clear yet. I think the father was just trying to piece together anything he can around the time. He did say in an interview yesterday that he is aware that his daughter was in an abusive relationship with a male. It's not clear whether that's the father of the children or any of those children, but he does say that his daughter has endured a lot of domestic violence, a lot of abuse in a relationship. So he does say that he believes that could have attributed to her being in not a good mental state, and he believes that there was a trigger. Something happened to her prior to this happening, and it's certainly shaken their lives. They will also have to now try and find out from her as to exactly what happened, what led to this. It's a question many are asking, I think, across the country. A mother before the courts, allegedly for killing her 4 children in such a gruesome matter, in such a gruesome way, from what we're hearing from the family as well as community members.
Zikhona Tshona, let me let you go. Thank you very much for adding to this conversation. And as we wrap up, we were meant to discuss Tasneem and Mr. Omry Makgoale, the whole state of coalitions in South Africa, but I think that's a discussion for another day. I'd like to offer the two of you a moment just to reflect on the story that Zikhona has just relayed around this gruesome story that has happened in the Eastern Cape. How do we make sense of this as a country?
It's a difficult one. I mean, such a difficult position for the family to be in. And I think, look, if what the father is saying is an accurate reflection, things like mental health do need to be taken seriously. And I think it's a case of, seeing what unfolds. But, for now, it's just to really hold empathy for that family and community.
Yeah. Mr. Makgoale?
I think on my side, I think it's a poor reflection on us as men, that she was alone when she managed to do what she did with her children. Because I believe that if she had a partner around who was always there for him, the partner would have intervened and say, no, but we don't need to do this to your children. Yeah. So I think that it's absent fathers in this particular case. It did not really help. And I think for us as men, we need to do more to support our partners. Yeah. Even if we no longer have maybe a love relationship. But when you have children, it's important for us as men to actually support our children, to be there for them all the time so that we don't get such stories.
Let me thank the two of you for coming through, and I suppose from my side, perhaps the moral of the story is that less judgment towards her right now and perhaps more understanding what drove her to do this, and perhaps until those answers come through, we may be able to opine, because we as human beings, we love to do that. We love to pass judgment. So for now, perhaps that family, all it needs is support. Omry Makgoale, thank you very much for coming through. Tasneem Esso, let me thank you very much for making the time. And my thanks to our colleague, Zikhona Tshona, down in the Eastern Cape.